Welcome to Inspired Changemakers, a podcast about all the amazing things people are doing to make the world a better place. This podcast is about creating change and the moments that inspired our guests to activate. My name is Julia Healy, and I'm the CEO of United Charitable. Stay tuned to be inspired. Jill Kubit, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here.
Inspired Changemakers is all about people that are making a difference in their community or themselves, and you are the definition of a changemaker. So I'm going to go into your bio first. So Jill Kubit is a social entrepreneur and climate communicator, which I can't wait to dig into, like what that means, working to build and scale creative engagement strategies in the U.S. and around the globe. Jill has co-founded multiple projects, including DearTomorrow, Climate Parent Fellowship, and helped establish the labor environmental field. Jill is a leading voice in the climate arts and storytelling, cultural and narrative strategies, climate communication, and the movement building. Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, actually, there's another one that I founded, which my team would be probably upset if there wasn't mentioned, which is Our Kids Climate. So I've been working in the climate space for about 20 years, and in the last 10, I've done a lot of work to kind of go out a little bit on my own or with others and kind of creating kind of new ideas and new strategies in the field. So most of the work is around DearTomorrow and Our Kids Climate.
So tell me a little bit about storytelling as a tool for driving climate change. Like, what does that even mean?
Well, for driving solutions to climate change, so the idea behind the work with DearTomorrow and with other storytelling work is that, you know, the way people make decisions and the way people have behaviors or the way people think is largely about how they see themselves in the world and kind of like the images they see and the stories they hear and how people talk about the moment we're in. And so much of that is through stories. Stories really are how people, learn new things, how they remember what they heard. And so in order for us, I think, to really address the climate crisis, which to me is, the greatest crisis that we face in society, we have to tell a new story about what is the world that we live in and what are we doing to transform that world and make that world livable for our children today and for future generations.
Can you give us an example of a story?
A story. I mean, I think like we are living through, I think we often think about stories as like individual stories. And they, they're really powerful stories about people, taking action. But I think what I'm really interested in is like, what is the big story we're telling ourselves about what is going on in the world and what change, what kind of transformation we want to see, and how do we look at what's happening in the world? How do we talk to each other? And so it's like it's like not necessarily one individual story. It's like a big narrative story about this moment in time.
So tell me, how did this all start? Where did you grow up?
So I moved around when I was a kid. I lived in 4 different places. I lived in suburbia, U.S. I lived in Massachusetts and Kentucky, outside of Chicago and in Cleveland. And I just grew up kind of in the late 70s, early 80s, 90s, in suburban U.S.
And have you always been an advocate for the environment? Like, did you recognize as a kid that this is something you truly cared about, or?
No, I think my mom in particular is a very kind of progressive person, but she's very much like a suburban housewife, and she worked part-time or, she worked and she took care of us, but she always was interested in doing good in the world. And so I kind of grew up in this household where, sometimes we would volunteer, we would go to a soup kitchen, or her work was very much, she was a nurse and she was working at the time that I most remember, she was working in the inner city in Chicago, and sometimes we would go to work with her, and So I was just exposed very like early on into kind of this idea of like being like, you know, like doing good in the world, or thinking about like what is your role, and like how do you work with others.
Yeah.
So that was always kind of a part of my experience growing up. The environmental stuff. So then it's like I felt like I had this idea when I was like in high school and college, that like I was like, I want to do something that like matters, that has impact, but I had no idea what that was.
Right.
And so it wasn't until like I like experimented with a few different things. I was a teacher in DC public schools for 2 years. You probably don't know that about me, but I taught 5th grade in DC.
Oh my God.
In the late 90s. Because I was like, I grew up, I like loved school, I loved education, and I thought like every child should have high quality education. And so at the time, and I was like, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And so I through Teach for America, I taught in the public schools for 2 years. And it was very transformative. I did learn through that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do with my career. However, I was really exposed to like how amazing teachers are and the incredible work they do.
Right.
And so I do, now that I'm a parent, I have a real appreciation for like the schools and the teachers and all of the work. And I think it's very unseen as like in a profession.
And so then how did we end up in Brooklyn?
I moved here with a relationship. So yeah. People travel for love, I guess.
Yeah. And then
when you're trying to get like, how did I get to do like climate work?
Yeah.
And how do I do environmental work? So I knew I wanted to work, or I felt like I wanted to make an impact in some way in my life. And I also had this strange sense at the time, like that I was going to be working like 40 hours a week of my week.
Right. For your life.
And I wanted to actually enjoy what I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I know I want to do something like that's good in the world, and I also want to do something that like I enjoy. So it did take me quite a bit of time to like figure out and establish what that was. So I was a teacher, and then at the job after that was that I worked in the labor movement, and I did kind of like organizing, and I worked in an education setting and ran like organized classes, and I did a lot of the administrative work that is behind the creating educational settings. And then in 2005, I learned about the climate crisis, and I actually, in that moment, I knew like this is what I wanted to work on. And so from that point on, I've spent, 2 decades like thinking about these issues. For the first 10 years, I worked in the labor movement, specifically on climate, and thinking about if we were going to transition our economies, what does that mean for workers who are in the fossil fuel sector or are connected to the fossil fuel sector, so manufacturing, transportation,
right,
and such.
And so then you decided you wanted to go back and get another degree? Like what? So yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was in my mid 30s when I decided that I wanted to go back to school.
Okay.
And I felt like I had been working on climate for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I felt like I wanted to make a transition. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. But I also knew that I needed a break and I needed some time to reflect and think about what I wanted to do. And I also felt like I have established my career and I have an undergraduate degree, and I was like,
what was your undergraduate degree in?
In psychology and in women's studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
so I played around with a lot of different subjects, but they're all connected.
Yeah. They all serve a purpose now specifically. Yeah. So then you decided that you wanted to, and so you went back and got a degree in.
So I went, I did an amazing program at Harvard where you can do a 1-year program on, it's a master's in public administration. So it's really, I wanted to think about organizations and leadership, and the program there takes people who have at least 10 years of work experience and helps people think about like, how is their experience influencing what do they want to do in the next step of their career.
I'd like to thank United Charitable for sponsoring today's Inspired Changemakers podcast. United Charitable is a national nonprofit that focuses on guiding you on your charitable journey. Whether you like to simply streamline your giving or you like to create your own charitable initiative, United Charitable has the knowledge and resources to support you. If you'd like to learn more, check out the link in our bio. Because I think as people are individuals, sometimes we just try to get by, that we don't think about the footprint that we leave. And we've talked about this, is that my daughter, when she was very young, they did like a whole thing on plastic bags. And now especially as a new mom, what do you use a million times over? Those Ziploc plastic bags. And she came home from daycare, whatever. It was daycare, but it was whatever. And she was like, Mom, no, we can't. Do you know what they're doing to the environment? Like, and do you know, I'm just trying to get you to school with a snack, kid. Like, I can barely do this. Like, what do you want me to use? Reusable ones that I have to wash out now? Do they go into the dishwasher?
Absolutely.
And she was like, no, Mom, you can use plastic jars that have the glass jars that have the little, and all the things. And she was like, Ma, and it was so funny to me because I think a lot as individuals, we don't realize about what we are doing and how we take it on individually. And so why did you think that having it, really developing something where you're having individuals tell their stories about how they want to make the world a better place or the environment a better place for their next generation, how do you think that's going to change the mindset?
I feel like there's a lot to unpack with what you just said. Well, first of all, I think that change happens at a number of different levels. And while I think the individual actions that people take are extremely important, I also think most of the change that needs to happen has to happen on a broad societal level in terms of the infrastructure that we have, the choices that people are able to make, the laws that are passed, kind of how the world is organized, like what energy systems do we have, what transportation systems do we have. That at a systematic level, big picture level is really, really important. And I think that the reason why the individual work level stuff is so important, it's because it informs what is happening at this big picture.
Of course.
You can't have a law that says there's a plastic banned somewhere unless people care about it and unless people are acting. But you also can't just rely on everyone to do the plastic bags. You have to get people really interested in something, actually engaged, talking about it, and then that's when big change can happen. And so I'm really interested in this link between and a lot of times people say it's only individual or it's only policy, but I'm really interested in the links between the two. And a lot of it is because we're all social beings. As much as we'd love to think we're all individual thinkers, we're really social beings. We do things because our friends do them or because
we were meant to be in
family.
community. Yeah.
And so we want to, the changes that individuals can have really are helping to change the norms, what's considered normal in terms of how society is structured. So that's part of the question. And then now I'm lost on on the other parts.
No, I think you answered it though.
Okay.
Because with specifically DearTomorrow, you've also been able to go speak in front of the UN. So tell me some of the cool things that DearTomorrow has done to really make a difference.
Should I talk about what DearTomorrow is?
Yes.
Okay. And then I hope I can, yeah. So DearTomorrow is a 10-year storytelling project which invites people to write a letter to somebody that they care about in their life, their child or their grandchild, or if they're a teacher, their students. It's imagining somebody that you care about that's younger than you. Then you are writing them a letter that's part of our archive to tell this person that you love what the world is like and what challenges that we face and what you would dream the world could be. What is the world that, when you have a child, and you have these big crises in the world around the climate or around democracy or around like scarcity or water or whatever is like
Freedom,
what you're interested.
Yeah.
When you have someone you love that's little than you and you're taking care of them, you can't say like, oh, like that's too bad. Like there's terrible air pollution. Like too bad. It's like you have to think like, what do we actually want for our children and grandchildren? The kind of clean water, clean air, people living in communities, people taking care of one another. What is that world we would like? And then what is the role you're playing? And so you're writing, like people who are participating are writing like very deep personal kind of testimonials or stories that they're sharing with other people in their lives.
Has there been one story that you have read that has stuck with you or hit you the most? Or is there any common themes between?
I can share one that really kind of transformed my thinking. But yeah, we have at this point we have a collection of about 7,000 letters, and from people submitting them from more than 50 countries. We're currently doing some work in South Africa, in Colombia, and in Eastern Europe, also in the U.S. and in the U.K. But the letter that like sits with me that I think I will always love is a letter that was written by a woman who's in the U.S. and she was writing about. She was writing not just about climate. So we started the project, and we were like, a lot of people in the early days of the project were just talking about climate change. And as she was writing her letter, she was also talking about police brutality. She was talking about what it is like to raise like 2 young black boys. She was talking about racism, and she just kind of opened up all of these other issues that are connected to climate, but also really showcase like what was happening in her world, but also in the world in a broader scale. And so to me, it kind of was like a wake-up call that we were not just capturing like about how people are thinking about climate change, we were also capturing what was historically happening in the world in terms of other social justice issues and in terms of elections. So another letter, like people talk about elections, and we've had letters from Brazil that talk about water scarcity. Like, so we're capturing so much about how people see the world and how the world has changed. And so now we have this 10-year archive of letters that kind of show and this historical progression of like other, like lots of things that have happened in the last 10 years. The California wildfires. There's just like so much that we're like documenting that is about climate, but it's about all-inclusive about climate and in society and about what the world is and what we want the world to look like.
And how powerful that is that you are capturing the change people want to see. I mean, that's not a lot of people capture that. We capture with facts, right? Dates, what happened, who's in charge of it. But you're capturing people's hearts and what they wanted. That's an amazing project. And so tell me, how did it get as big as it got? And how have you created that sustainability? And
I'm still wondering if it is sustainable.
Don't say that.
I mean, I think that it's been DearTomorrow is an incredibly influential project because we were one of the first climate storytelling project to exist, and there are some others. So many of them have shut down because they couldn't get the support or funding, and so we just have been like sticking with it, and we have really been building it over the last 10 years.
And I just want to let you know, and for our listeners, I have known Jill for 10 years, a decade now, but I've also seen the other leaders you have trained. I've seen the employees you have hired. I've seen the opportunities you've given to people around the world. And just as a leader in general, I have been able to admire you from afar.
That's so sweet.
And just your leadership style and all that you're doing. But yeah, the sustainability and burnout. It's a real thing.
It's a thing. I would love someone to pay me to go on a sabbatical for the next, for a couple months, but I'm in a good spot right now, but it's a tough time in the world right now.
Well, and I think as nonprofit leaders, right, we really want change. Like, we think about it a lot. And we think about how we can get it, what opportunities are missed, if we did more, if this happened, or right. Like, I think we spend our time thinking about it because it's something we're incredibly passionate about. It's not just a job.
Yeah,
you already said it.
If it was a job, I would work like a normal work week, a normal hours. And
Yeah.
but I'm always thinking about this. I'm always thinking about like, how are we talking about climate? How are we building movements? How are we supporting other people? I mean, I think I'm in a position now where I'm able to, because I've built kind of two organizations, both DearTomorrow and Our Kids Climate. I've been able to see kind of an experience, like what it's like to start something from scratch, and it's really hard. And so now I'm really, really interested in providing space for other people who are change makers and who are, organizers or leaders who have a really great idea, but that they need that first
the incubation.
Support.
Yeah,
you need someone to give you like a little bit of money, like as a grant, or as like for Our Kids Climate, we run a fellowship program. It's like people need support and like financial support. They also need acknowledgement of their work. And so I'm now in a space because I've spent a lot of time kind of failing. I've failed a lot.
I would like to thank Athletes Charitable for sponsoring today's Inspired Changemakers podcast. Athletes Charitable offers a concierge membership service that provides the tools and resources to build a legacy through service. Our athlete-led team has the first-hand experience and expertise to provide hands-on support that simplifies the entire process for athletes and entertainers to reach their social entrepreneurship goals and create lasting impact in their communities. To learn more, check out the link in the bio.
As a nonprofit leader, that burnout that we talk about, picking ourselves back up that you just said, like, that's real. How do you pick yourself back up in the moments when you do get rejected?
Well, one, I'm used to it. Like the first time I was very naive, I think, when I started, which was I had this amazing idea and I'm going to build a team of 5 people from the get-go, and we're going to just go out. We have this amazing idea and everyone's going to love it. And so I was I'm just going to apply to an open call or a fellowship.
Yeah.
And the first time you get a letter of rejection, you're just oh my God, somebody doesn't like my idea and it's a failure. But over time you experience as a founder, you have to put yourself back out there over and over and over again. And whether it's a failed interview or it's a failed proposal, or it's a partnership, somebody promised you something and didn't come through, you have to, first of all, not take any of that personally. And secondly, know that if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't ask someone for money, or you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to get what you need. So in order to get all the things that you need, all the support you need, you have to basically constantly ask. And enough people say yes that things come, that things come true, or
Do you know how much money you've raised in the last 10 years?
I actually, one of the days when I was feeling what am I doing with myself, I remembered that I'm actually a decent fundraiser and I have 2 really amazing organizations, and I did a little calculation. So I and my team have raised over $7 million in the last 10 years, and it started really small. We started DearTomorrow with $1,000, and that was a small $1,000 grant. So it basically started with nothing, and now, I think we've surpassed the $7 million mark.
Yeah. And when, there's a lot of times, especially in my career as a nonprofit, which I'm not a single focus nonprofit, right? I am a fiscal sponsor and I help, and spoiler alert, I'm actually Jill's fiscal sponsor. But my job is to inspire people to keep believing that they can change. And for me, when certain things happen in the world. I'm like, is change even, like every day I talk to social entrepreneurs that want to make a difference. And here I am telling them that they can and all these things. And then I'll go to your website in all reality. And I'll tell you this straight up. I will feel low in that moment. And I will be like, I don't know. And I'll have to get on and tell somebody else some really hard news. We just had some EPA grants canceled. Like right now it's a challenging environment, especially with grants. And I'll go to your website and I'll just look at the pictures and I'll think, okay, well, okay, I did it. Okay, that's okay. We're good for today. Like change can happen. But I think what's really interesting about your project is it has gotten picked up. You have been able to speak in front of the UN. You have been able to be on stages. You just went to Sweden recently, or was it?
No, I mean, I've had some really amazing opportunities. I did a TED Talk in 2016, which nobody has seen. So there's that. I got to speak at the UN. We have a new partnership with the MoMA here in New York City, which to me is like a dream come true. So I've gotten to do some like pretty high profile things, but I've also got to work with like community organizers and lots of like grassroots groups and national campaigns and strategies. And so like, I feel really, really lucky because I'm inspired by all of the people who are doing this work. But so we set up this project. We put, I think I said before, we had $1,000. We had this idea around writing a letter about climate to someone you love. And we had a website, and that's all we had. And we thought, we're just going to put this idea out there. But in order to do that, I had to think, like, I would have to write a letter before we actually make this a thing.
Right.
And so I and a few of the people who were very early on, Trisha Shrum, who is the co-founder with me, and a few other people, we all wrote our letters, but it took me like a few weeks to get up the courage to actually sit down and write about that moment in time, the climate crisis, what my role was, what I was doing, and what the world I imagined for him was, because I had to dig really, really deeply, and it brought up a lot of emotion, and it brought up just like a lot of care and concern. And it wasn't like an action you can go out and take and you go to a mobilization or you sign up to volunteer somewhere. It was actually like a deeply personal act. And so since then I've written I think 3 or 4 letters to him. But yeah, I always have to get up the courage to write. But the beauty of the work is that it's because it requires that like depth. Then the stories that people have shared with us, there are people's like joys and fears, concerns. They really, really tell a really deep story about what's happening in the world, and particularly around climate. And I think that is why we've had like incredible kind of opportunities and partnerships, and why people are interested, because we are doing like very deep kind of transformative work in order to create more inspired people to engage.
Sorry, I just got emotional because I still have my grandparents' handwriting that they've like written to me of cards when I've accomplished something. And I just thought about if I did that for, like, I have not done that for my children yet.
You should write a letter.
I know. But, could you, like, if they just, in the moment my grandparents or whoever just told me they were proud of me, if I could actually know what they wanted the world to be like for me in 10 years, that would be really inspiring and as well. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a similar value-driven storytelling-based initiative? Because it's creative, right? So like,
yeah. Well, yeah. So it's creative. It's the letters. It's a letters project. But now people have done poetry. We have audio. We're doing film. We do major installations. And well, thank you for sharing also your story, because this is why storytelling is so important, because people make decisions and their beliefs are based on how they feel about things, right?
Yeah.
And so the whole design behind Dear Tomorrow was at the time to move people from just talking about climate change and talking about these issues through like facts and figures and through data, and move it into like, what is the legacy you have? What are the stories you have? How do you think about your family? So just sharing this fact that you made this connection between our project and this, like the notes and the stories that you were told by your grandparents, that is what we're like trying to tap into and build, because we feel like that we need to feel deeply about these issues, and that's in order to really be activated and to communicate with each other why these issues are so important.
But I think when it comes to climate change specifically, sometimes it can feel like there's too much to change. And that we personally can't take a role. How do we, other than writing a letter, are there other things or other ways that we can learn about how we can help the environment as families and individuals?
There's so many amazing.
So plastics really as bad as the world says it? I'm kidding.
On the plastics question, I think like we have to move from being like super high consumer and a throwaway society. That is part of the challenge that we face. So yes, the stuff around plastics is terrible. We also have to change like the energy systems that we have. We have to stop burning fossil fuels. We have to prioritize like clean air and clean water. We have to think about the natural resources we have and really work to protect and preserve them. So yeah, we need more plants, we need more beauty, we need more natural spaces and parks, and there's so many different things and ways that people can get involved. So the process that we have with Dear Tomorrow, we feel like it's really easy to like do an action. There's this thing, this mind thing that happens, is that often when people are concerned about something, they will like do one thing and then they'll feel like, okay, I did something.
Yeah, I gave up plastic bags.
One thing, and then it's done, because like our mind, that's how our minds work. And so our work is around deepening the care and concern about the issues. And we feel like when you care more deeply, then you start to see, there's a few different things I could be working on, or I can be concerned on. One is like, maybe something in my household. Maybe another is like how you vote. Another could be being involved in a project at your kid's school that's, something around food or something around like waste. There's so many different things you can do, and the reason we do our work is that we feel like we need that to connect that depth or that identity that we have, so that we can be more engaged on the issue. And we hope that people are doing work also, not just thinking about themselves as like an individual, but it's like, what can I do in my community? What can I do with others? Because I think that's when where people sustain their engagement. It's like, I'm involved in a community organization. Right. Then I also have friends there, and it's actually kind of fun. And like, then I'm like going and engaging, not just because I feel like I feel good about doing something. It's also because it's social, and I'm like fully engaged, and I feel part of something, and I feel part of that change with others. So I think that's really important, is like finding, if I were to like, when we work specifically with Dear Tomorrow, but like when we work now, we don't work with individuals. We work with community groups and leaders who are engaging others. So they'll do like a Dear Tomorrow project in their community, and then people are interacting and engaging with each other, and they're helping to build the relationships between people.
That is the one common theme that, if I had to say with all my podcasts about people that are creating change, is finding the community that supports the change that you want to see, and how it can bond and deepen your relationship with them. So, well, Jill, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I am truly inspired, but not only for your dedication, but to see who you've brought up around you, because that's also a telltale sign of a leader. And it has been a pleasure watching you grow and making change.
Oh, thank you for having me, and for all the support you guys have provided.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Find Inspired Changemakers on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and comment on all the awesome things you are doing to make this world a better place. Don't forget to subscribe.